Hi everyone. My name is Matt Filgate, President and CEO of Greenlight Metals. Very excited to be here today and discuss our projects. We're focused in the US, in Wisconsin, and we're exploring for VMS deposits. We have a very exciting project we're currently drilling, and we should see some really nice results coming out here at the end of summer into early September.
Brilliant, Matt. Lovely to speak to you. New story for us. But let's start with first things first. So tell us a little bit about you, where you've come from, what you've done, and how's it relevant to what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my background is in geology. So worked as an exploration geologist for the last 15 years. A lot of that focused in early stage, so big land package, executing early greenfields exploration. And now, I guess called over the last 4 or 5 years, I transitioned to the corporate side. We founded a company called Talisker Resources. So I joined Terry Harbert as VP Corporate Development there. Really focused on project acquisition, capital raising, marketing. And then this opportunity was introduced to me. It would have been about a year and a half ago. So I got involved and then took on the position full time around a year ago as President CEO. Really focused on executing exploration at the early stage, large scale across a large greenstone belt in Wisconsin. So background's technical, but really the last 4 or 5 years of my career has been focused on the corporate side, the M&A side, and capital raising, and building out this story now.
Right. Okay. Well, look, there's lots to talk about, and we'll kind of get into the asset proper in a minute. But obviously, not a bad time to be talking about copper in the U.S. 50% tariffs, says Mr. Trump. That's probably got people excited.
It does. Yeah, it does. And look, we're seeing a real shift in the mentality of people in the United States right now. When you talk about mining back in the 70s and 80s, it was always environmental concern. It was a dirty business. With everybody transitioning to the green side now, we're talking about infrastructural build, national security, electrification. Copper's in high demand. And with what's going on with Trump announcing these new 50% tariffs that are coming in on imports, they got to backfill that with domestic supply. And so the US right now has some pretty big projects that are in the pipeline, but that's only going to satisfy the short term. So we as a company need to be out there exploring for high grade, quick to market projects, and that's our focus in Wisconsin.
Right, and let's kind of clear that up. I want to understand the business model, right? Okay, because you've got this Wisconsin project. As I said, we'll talk about it in a second. But what is the plan? Because if I'm looking at the number of board members you've got and what they've done, it's pretty heavyweight compared to a company of your size typically has. Same with the management team. There's a lot of weight there. Why? Why have you set it up like that?
Yeah, certainly. So on the board side, we wanted people that are involved in Wisconsin, not in mining, but in politics, in different industries that can open doors and avenues for us. So I guess Steve Donahue would be probably one of the most important members that we have on our board. He's a 30-year mining veteran, permitting, community engagement all across the upper Midwest. So he's been there through the ups and downs and different political challenges. Different governments, and he's seen projects move forward, and he's seen projects stall and get delayed. So he really knows the recipe. He was also one of the authors of the Wisconsin Mining for America Act, which really changed the legislation in Wisconsin, permitting reform, so overhauled the previous permitting regime, and really started to build a pathway to fast track projects and bring them into production in that state. And then we have other board members that are involved or from Wisconsin, but involved in infrastructure with the government, involved in forestry. So Bill Johnson runs one of the largest timber companies in the state, and he has those relationships with the different tribes and government at all levels. So we wanted to build out our board to be very supportive of what we're trying to do. And we see that. So a lot of our board members are very active, making introductions, speaking with government on our behalf. So not just figureheads that are sitting there, acting essentially as employees of the company. So we're all pulling the rope in the same direction, and that's really key. Wisconsin, is a state that has had some political hardships in the past. It was a very active state for mineral exploration, 1960s, 1970s, all the way through into the early 90s. We had Rio Tinto, BHP, Exxon, all exploring for VMS deposits, and a lot of really nice discoveries were made in the state. Unfortunately, the largest discovery, the Crandon, which is a 60 million ton VMS system, caused quite a bit of controversy when BHP started permitting it. And what that ultimately ended in was a mining moratorium that was put into place in the state of Wisconsin in 1997. So that was overturned in 2017. And that was a pivotal point. That was the state saying, we're interested in bringing companies back, creating jobs, and reopening this industry with new permitting regulations and basically allowing us to get a mine permitted again.
Right, but it's obviously 20 years without it means that the people who knew a bit about mining are long gone. So are they kind of reinventing themselves from the ground up? I mean, obviously lessons learned, you said from Crandon and Flambeau, etc. But what's it actually like working in the state at the moment? Directly or indirectly?
Yeah. So we're drilling right now. It was fairly straightforward to get a drill permit. Takes about 4 months. Their regulations are stricter than somewhere like British Columbia or Ontario. So a lot of water monitoring, reporting. We work very closely with the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources for the state. They come out to site once a week. So they're very, very involved in what we're doing. Again, this is one of the first exploration programs in the last 20, 25 years in the state. So you're right. A lot of that knowledge has been lost. And so we're working with state regulators, showing them how we do this properly, because I come from British Columbia, another place where, permitting is very strict and you have to follow very, very tight guidelines when it comes to potential environmental issues. So, we're implementing that here in Wisconsin, the way that we operate, and we're seeing a lot of respect from the DNR on that front.
Tell me a little bit more about the kind of the strategy for how you kind of roll this plan of yours out. You got you got two assets at the moment, but a kind of flagship asset. But what's the idea? You're going to build something which has a kind of larger portfolio of Wisconsin assets, or get focused? What's the plan?
Yeah, so right now we are focused on Bend. Bend is a 4.5 million ton historic resource at 2% copper, 2.3 grams per ton gold, so just under 4% copper equivalent. It was only drilled in a 330 meter area, so very tightly constrained. And the land package that sits along strike was a private land package. So back in the 90s, when Jump River Ventures was drilling it, they could never acquire that private land package. We now own that package. And so the drill program that we're executing right now are step out holes from that 330 meters of strike that's defined 4.5 million tons. So we see the potential to grow this quickly. This first phase of drilling is just under 3,000 meters. So it's a smaller program, but it's designed to show the upside of the project. It's followed by a phase 2 program, which is about 6,000 meters that will begin in October. And that 6,000 meters will be doing some infill in the main ore body, but continuing to follow up on these step-out holes and start to build a resource. And ultimately, we'd like to see a resource in that 15 to 20 million tons at Bend. And if we can maintain that grade, that's a world-class VMS deposit.
Right, and you say you own that 100%? I mean, what did it cost you?
So we started out in a lease with it, and then we bought out the lease. I'd have to double-check the total amount, but it was low. Yeah, I would say a couple $100,000. 250,000. Yes.
Okay. And any data come with that?
A little bit, yeah. There'd been 5 historic drill holes on that property. They hit sulfide mineralization, some good copper grades. So really now we're trying to figure out the makeup, the architect of the limb that comes down, and so that's really the focus of this drilling. How big is it? How big can it be? How deep does it go? So these are real step out holes to understand the geometry of the deposit.
Right. You're talking about like 3,000 meter drill program, right? So if you just started that,
yeah,
is that literally you haven't got any assays back yet?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Yeah, we've completed about 700 meters of that 3,000 meter program.
Okay.
And first hole is being shipped out today, I believe. So we should see. I would call it about a month turnaround time. So
okay. What do you think? So I'm sort of intrigued in how you're kind of planning out the drill model and the drill targeting specifically. I know it's step out, but is it all step out?
No. So we're starting right on the edge of the known deposit. So it's tracing the limb down. So The geometry of the ore body, it's a vertically dipping. It dips about 80 degrees. The thickness ranges from 25 meters up to anywhere up to 60, 70 meters in thickness. So it's a thick, massive sulfide body. And it comes right to surface, but then it plunges down to the east. And so we're chasing that plunging limb down.
Right. And are you seeing any sort of folding or shearing in there? Or
No, it's
are you
actually
aware of any?
it's put together pretty well. Yeah, it's holding together really nicely. Unlike the Bathurst camp or some of these large VMS camps in Canada where everything's been faulted and juxtaposed, this is what we're seeing is it's fairly continuous and very little faulting and very little deformation, which is very interesting for these proterozoic rocks.
Right, and can you give us a bit more information on the kind of, I guess, the geophysical anomaly type, V10 type,
Yeah.
identified stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, it's that's how all these deposits in Wisconsin were discovered. So the state's a flat state. It's covered in anywhere from 100 meters, called 30 meters to 100 meters of till. So every known deposit in the state was discovered using EM or some kind of form of EM. And so that's really the exploration method. In 2011, 2012, Aquila Resources flew a V10 program over the Bend project area. And so we've had some of that reprocessed now, and we've pulled out another 3 anomalies, nice V10 anomalies in that belt around Bend. And so we are in the process of acquiring those right now. To come back to your question on if we plan to add more land. So we plan to bring those anomalies in and explore those as well. Because typically with these VMS deposits, they form in clusters, right? I'm sure you've heard that before 100 times, but that's the reality of them. So Bend is one sulfide lens, and we're hoping we can get that up into the 15 to 20 million ton range. But 6 kilometers away, there's a V10 anomaly that looks the exact same as Bend looked before it was drill tested. So they form in these pods and clusters. So it'll be ultimately the plan here is to drill out a broader area and end up with 3 or 4 deposits all kind of centrally located within 6 to 10 kilometers of each other.
Okay, so can you, tell me a little bit more about the kind of Alteration Halo and its kind of, I guess, more interestingly, its usefulness as a vectoring tool for kind of either deeper or lateral mineralization?
Yeah. So the Alteration Halo isn't significant.
Right.
What it is it's sericite alteration in the volcanic. So when you're drilling through, you're going through metasediments. So you're drilling through metasediments, and then you get into a breccia, like a felsic breccia, and then as you come down, you get into a sericite altered, chlorite altered schist, and then the ore body sits right below that. And then the footwall of that is a basaltic unit. So you know where you're at when you're drilling. So when we're drilling, if we start to see that alteration, that sericite chloride alteration, we know that we're getting right next to the zone. But it's not a massive alteration halo around it. Get through that,
Okay.
and then when you take into the basalt, you're out. You're in the footwall.
Okay, so what else? I'm just trying to think of the techniques to try and understand, obviously, what you're looking at in terms of, I don't know, oriented core or downhole geophysics, etc. What are the tools available to you, and how are you so far interpreting those?
Yeah, so we there was no previous oriented core done on this program, so we are doing oriented core.
Yeah.
So we'll get a better understanding of the limb that's coming down and the makeup. We are going to do downhole geophysics, downhole EM, but we're going to do it on holes 4 and 5. And the reason why we're doing it on holes 4 and 5 is because they're the furthest step out. So if we hit mineralization, we really want to understand the strength of the anomaly down limb. So we'll be doing EM down or borehole EM on holes 4 and 5 to see if we can pick up that anomaly and the strength of it down limb on a further step out. So the holes that we're drilling right now, we have a pretty good idea that the zone is there and where the zone is. So there's not much need for it right now, but on holes 4 and 5, we will absolutely be using it.
And do you think you and look, I know there's a kind of initial drill program, right? But do you think that you would put a couple of holes in deeper to try and see if there's a kind of stacked lens potential to this as well?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. There's a V10 anomaly that sits about 1 kilometer away that's on the same strike as Bend. And so that's part of our phase 2 drilling. And so we're going to drill that. So we think that might be a stacked lens. What we've seen from the historic drilling is that once you're through the ore body or the ore horizon and you take into that basalt's basement rock.
Right.
So that's what sits underneath. That that would have been oceanic floor, and then you have sedimentation and volcanism on top of that. So we don't see any lenses underneath that. The one thing that we haven't seen at Bend is the what you'd call the stockwork zone that typically sits underneath the VMS system. So we're not sure where that stockwork zone is. We have a nice thick layered massive sulfide lens, but we have never seen that stockwork zone. So we'd like to try and figure out where that is. Obviously, the stockwork zone sits right at the main vent, right above the main vent. You typically get really high grade copper in that stockwork zone. So look, we're doing a bit of modeling to try and figure out where that could potentially be. And the main part of the deposit where it kind of goes 50, 60 meters thick, it looks like there may be two lenses kind of coalescing there. But it's it's so early right now, Matt. Like we're just doing our first phase of drilling, and we're just getting, I call it modern day drilling. The last drilling was done years and years ago. So bringing in this oriented data, remodeling it, resampling a lot of the old core, so really understanding the distribution of copper versus gold. We also see a lot of tellurium in the deposit.
Right.
We took 250 samples of the high grade ore, and it came back averaging 300 to 325 gram per ton tellurium. So very high grade tellurium there, which adds a different element to the project as we talk about green energy and solar panel manufacturing, which uses up 40% of the world's tellurium. So it's a very interesting project. It's very early days, but we see, I think the key thing for potential investors is that we see a lot of room to grow on this project. Okay. We see the potential for a large resource, a very high grade resource, and being down in the U.S., these high grade, near surface, easy accessible resources can get fast tracked into production.
Right, and if I look at something like the Reef Project, I mean, how much effort are you putting into the Reef Project?
So nothing in 2025.
Right. Okay.
So,
okay. Fine.
Okay. Just for your viewers, the Reef Project's an orogenic vein system. Sits on the shear zone in the southern part of the belt, and it's high grade quartz veins. And so there's a historic resource there of 100,000 ounces at just over 9 grams. So drilling in 2011, 2012 by Aquila, stepped out, proved another 300 meters along strike. There was never a resource update or a resource done on it, but very nice intersect. So typical orogenic vein systems, very high grade cores. So the cores, I think that Aquila intercepted 14.5 meters at over 14 grams, and then sits in a larger kind of fault-filled structure that has brecciation and stockwork veining that kind of forms these, call them envelopes that average 60 meters at 3 grams or 90 something meters at over a gram and a half. So it's a great project. It would likely have to be an open pit. It comes right to surface. So there's a lot of potential there, but our focus right now is discovery on the VMS side and growing Bend, building out a resource at Bend.
Okay, so typical orogenic project.
Very similar to a if anyone follows Barkerville Gold.
Yeah.
Same.
The classic comp. Sorry, just sticking on it for a second. I mean, are the gold and the copper mineralization, are they kind of genetically linked, or are they housed in separate phases?
Good question. We're actually doing a study on that right now.
Okay.
We think that the gold, because there's sections of the Bend project which are very high grade. You can get up to a meter at 22 grams per ton. We think that is likely associated with tellurides. So that's where we're getting the kick in tellurium. And but in the main copper zone where you see 2 to 3% copper, it's always accompanied by over a gram per ton gold across the deposit. Right. You get into areas in the deposit where the copper drops off a bit and the gold kicks up, and we think that that's probably related to tellurides, more tellurides coming in as a carrier for the gold.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll leave that because you're not kind of focused on that, but it's in the back pocket. We just in terms of kind of where you're at in terms of the kind of financial structure, capital allocation, all that kind of good stuff. Obviously, we've got a 3,000 meter program, 750 meters into that. How have you funded that?
Yeah. So we did a capital raise when we went public. So we raised just under 4 million, about 3.8 million. We had 400,000 in the bank, so kind of came out of the gate with that 4.3 million. Right now we have about 2.8 left after drilling and property payments and the go public process, which we all know costs a bit of money. So yeah, we're funded through these programs right now. But we'll likely look to do a capital raise come September, October this year, probably on the back of drill results, showing that, you know, this could turn into a very large deposit and that we need more money to go drill it and start to build out a resource that could be economic here. And that's
Right.
what we're focused.
So coming back to the question earlier about the kind of size of the board and the management team, I guess everyone's set up there with stock and options or
Yeah.
RSUs, right?
Yeah.
No one's got their hand out for cash.
No. Well,
Okay.
So the board of directors gets paid in stock in RSU.
Yeah.
So they collect their fees in that. My
Yeah.
first year with the company, I took only stock, so I didn't take any
Yep.
cash. And
Good
I
man.
wanted to do that, and then I put my own money into the company as well. So we own about 9% at
Good.
this point of the company between management, and then we have 65 million shares outstanding. Current market cap today is around 14 million, 13.5 million. And our shareholder base, there's institutions in there that make up around 22%. Fastcore and Delbrook being the two biggest funds, both own roughly about 9.9, just under 10%. And then just over 70% of our shareholder base is high net worth and retail. And
Right.
that's
Okay.
made up of 50% of that's made up of four guys. So four high net worth guys, long term investors, wrote checks. One of them being Alex Gubbins out of Peru, and then a few guys out of Vancouver, high net worth guys that really believe in the story and have written checks, you know, along the way and support us on market, buy on market. So it's a tight shareholder base. I think we have 162 shareholders when we came out public. We know every single one of them, so a lot of them are, you know, friends or colleagues or people that can offer some type of support. And yeah, it's been really good. So
Fantastic. I'd like to hear some of those things. Other options available to you. Assume warrants will come good at some point. Is that where are we with the warrants actually?
yeah, so the warrants. So I can just look over here quickly and give you a better breakdown. Warrants, there's 7.3 million warrants out. The average strike price of those is 47 cents, so a bit out of the money right now.
Yeah.
We just put out an extension on those because a lot of those warrants were part of a private raise as a private company. So they would have already expired, and we want to give those shareholders a chance, if you know, with our success, to be able to capitalize on those. So about 2 years, 24 months is the extension.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and what about things like the Nevada asset? Is there any point in spinning that out or selling it?
Yeah, so we're
Focus
in
on Wisconsin?
negotiations. We're in negotiations with a strategic on it right now.
Right.
So
Okay,
our
cool.
goal is to do an option or joint venture on that project. Have somebody fund the exploration to earn in, and then we'll take a royalty out of the back end and take cash payments each year. It's a great project. Very early stage. It's a low sulfidation epithermal system. Has all the right ingredients. It looks very similar to silicone. It's in Nevada. The only issue with those is that it just takes a lot of drilling. It's very similar to a Fruta del Norte, where, you know, I think it took them 75 drill holes to make their first hit. Right, so you have to vector in on those and find the bonanza zone, and it takes a lot of time and work. So it'd be a large deviation from what we're trying to do corporately in the copper space.
Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing is the desire to kind of be a Wisconsin company with Wisconsin people and developing Wisconsin assets. Not a lot of companies in Wisconsin, I guess, at the moment mining. So does that give you some kind of advantage?
Yeah,
in terms of
there's
picking
actually,
up assets.
to answer your question, there's zero companies, zero companies. So yeah, we're the only company exploring in the state right now. I believe there's another company that's just submitted a drill permit up in the northern part of the state, but looking for nickel and some other metals. But yeah, it was great. Look, we had the pick of the litter. We went out, we evaluated 25 different projects. Handpicked Bend as being the most advanced with the best opportunity to grow significantly, great grades as well. We also picked up a Lobo and Lobo East. So Lobo is a very, very high grade discovery from the late 70s, early 80s, discovered by Noranda. And at the time, they had discovered Crandon. So they were drilling a series of anomalies all in that Crandon area. They discovered Crandon, and then they packed up everything and focused on drilling out what ended up being a 60 million ton resource at Crandon. We were able to acquire Lobo. Historic drill results there, just over 9 meters at 23% zinc, 1.5% copper, 2% lead over a gram gold. So a very significant discovery. We're permitting that right now, so we'd like to put some drill holes into that in October, November this year. And then Lobo East is another VTEM anomaly that has never been drilled that sits about 4 miles away from Lobo. So very, very nice, very, very attractive potential discovery just sitting there waiting to happen. And so, yeah, we're very excited to drill those. And then we have 2 or 3 other projects around Bend that we're going to acquire over the next few months and start to put some holes into those too. So a lot of discovery potential here alongside of significant resource build out.
It's interesting. And you're going to kind of focus up on that north. Was it the Penokean volcanic belt?
Volcanic belt, yeah.
Penokean. I've
Yeah.
got it. Okay, Penokean volcanic belt. So that there were like 40 plus companies there at some point in the past, operated there for about 30, 35 years or so. Were they kind of mined out? And what were they chasing?
Yeah, so the only mine that ever went into production out of all that exploration was Rio Tinto's Flambeau mine.
Right.
And it was extremely high grade. They mined through just under 3 million tons at 6% copper and 5 gram per ton gold. Direct shipped it. It was all oxide. Direct shipped it up to Kid Creek to be processed up in Canada. There's still another 4 million tons of resource there, but they've reclaimed that pit and it's a nature park now. It looks really nice. That was the only mine that was in production. So there was a lot of exploration drilling done on different targets. So maybe 2 or 3 holes, a lot of discoveries made, but really a lot of it was never followed up. There was never, I guess at that time they were looking for high grade and something they could get into production very quickly. And so if it didn't match that, if it wasn't 3, 4, 5% copper, they just leave it. So there's a series of anomalies, a series of projects that sit along trend of Bend that range anywhere from 1 million to 2.5 million tons at 1.5% copper. But they just haven't seen any drilling. Maybe they, at the time they saw 5,000 meters, 8,000 meters of drilling. That's it, and then they packed up and left. So, yeah, there's a treasure trove of old data, and so we have a lot of it, and we've been going through it and sifting through it and looking at old drill logs. I mean, this is back in the 70s and 80s when they just pull up and put a drill and punch a hole into the ground. Maybe they'd hit something and they go, it's not big enough, and leave, right? So we can reinterpret all this data, fly modern day geophysics. A good example is there's one project where we found a couple of historic drill hole logs and we looked at the old EM that they had done back in 1977. They hit some smaller massive sulfide pod, kind of 1.5% copper over 6 meters, 7 meters. When it was flown with VTEM in 2012, there's a massive VTEM anomaly that sits about 800, 900 meters away from the small anomaly that they drilled. So they were very close to drilling the big anomaly, but they were just 600, 700 meters away because they were using ground EM, and it was in mid 1970s. So we have this advantage now with being able to go back and look at all this historic data, but also apply modern day techniques to go and find new discoveries and build up new projects.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is.
I like that.
We're very excited with the way things are going so far, and we got to try and get as much land as we can before everyone rushes to Wisconsin.
Matt, appreciate your time today. Thanks very much for introducing the story to us. Copper, we need more of it, and it being in the US, I'm kind of keen to see what that does for you. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it.